She sat quietly in seat 24A, close to the window, with her hands softly wrapped around a warm paper cup. Most passengers around her barely noticed her. She looked like someone who preferred silence, someone who didn't try to draw attention. She had a calm face, peaceful eyes, and a stillness that made her look almost invisible in the noise of the cabin. The flight had taken off smoothly, and the sun outside the window turned the clouds into golden shapes. She watched them like she was studying each one. No one knew that her mind was not lost in the clouds. She was listening. Listening the way someone listens when it has been trained into them. She heard things others couldn't hear. The soft change in engine pitch. The tiny shift in cabin pressure. Even the distant air-to-air radio chatter that most people never noticed. On her lap was a simple bag, nothing fancy. No one would guess that inside it was something that once defined her whole life, until she walked away from it. And now she was just another passenger on a normal flight. At least that's what the world thought, the passenger sitting next to her, a friendly elderly lady, kept trying to start small conversations. "Are you traveling home or traveling somewhere new?" The lady asked kindly. She smiled politely. "Just traveling," she answered in a soft tone. She didn't offer more. The lady nodded with understanding and went back to flipping through a magazine. An announcement came from the cockpit. The first officer's voice sounded relaxed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are cruising at 37,000 feet. Weather is calm, and we expect a smooth journey ahead." Most passengers barely listened, but the girl in seat 24A listened closely. Too closely. Her fingers slightly tightened around her cup. The radio had a background echo, something most people couldn't notice. But she could. A military channel nearby was active. Fighters were in the region. That wasn't unusual. But the tone in their voices, something was off. Not dangerous, just unusual. She breathed slowly, trying to shake the old habit of reacting to every small sound. She told herself, "You're not doing that anymore." You walked away. But habits didn't walk away from her. Outside, the sky slowly shifted from soft gold to deep blue. The cabin slowly relaxed into that gentle, sleepy mood that long flights often bring. A few children talked softly. Someone clicked open a laptop. Someone else lowered their seat, but she stayed alert without meaning to. A soft chime rang, ding, and a flight attendant walked by. She smiled at her with a friendly look. "Everything okay, miss?" "Yes," she said with a small nod. "Everything's fine." But the attendant paused for a second longer, noticing the way she kept her shoulders straight, like she was ready for something. She didn't question it. She moved on. About 20 minutes later, something shifted again. The girl in seat 24 felt it, not in the cabin, but outside. The aircraft tilted ever so slightly, like the pilots had adjusted the course. Passengers didn't notice, but she did. It was a protective maneuver. The military radio frequency clicked again. This time it was clearer, distinct, urgent without being panic. Eagle 1, visual on commercial aircraft. Moving into position. She froze. She knew that call sign. F-22 Raptors. High alert, escort formation. Why were they here? Her heart didn't beat faster out of fear, more like an instinct awakening. The old version of herself, the one she had tried so hard to bury, slowly rose from the shadows of her memory. Then something even stranger happened. A coded phrase came through the faint radio bleed, one she hadn't heard in years. Something only a very specific group knew. Something from her old life. Her chest tightened. There was no way they would use that code. Unless they recognized something. But how? She looked out the window slowly, trying not to attract attention. At first, she saw nothing. Only clouds. Only sky. Then, from the left side, just for a second, she saw a shadow slide past the wing. A fighter jet. Not just any fighter jet. A silver-gray F-22, flying so close she could almost see the pilot's visor. The passengers around her gasped. As they noticed, phones came out. People began whispering. Some looked excited, some nervous, some confused, but the girl in seat 24A didn't move. She didn't lift her phone. She didn't even blink much. Her breath settled into a slow pattern, the pattern she once used in a world where calm meant survival. Then she heard it again, the coded phrase. This time clearer. The fighter pilot spoke it like he was confirming something. Why were they confirming her call sign? No one on the plane knew she even had one. She had never told a soul. She hadn't used it in years. She thought it was buried in old records, forgotten by the world. And yet, here it was again, echoing through the thin metal of the aircraft, whispered by a pilot thousands of feet away. It wasn't possible. Unless they were looking for her. She didn't move, but deep inside, everything changed. Whatever she had run from had found her again, and the strangest part? The F-22 outside tilted its wings slightly, a formal salute in the air. A salute meant for her. A salute meant for someone with a call sign that no one was supposed to know. She whispered to herself, almost without meaning to. They remembered. Asterisk. For a long moment, she didn't move. She just sat there in seat 24A, staring at the faint reflection of the F-22 outside her window. The other passengers were whispering with excitement, but she stayed still, like someone listening to a voice far away. Her chest rose slowly, her fingers pressed softly against the armrest, and her eyes held a quiet shock she tried to hide. The coded phrase kept replaying in her mind. Something she had heard only once before, on the day she walked away from that old life. She had promised herself she would never react to it again. But her body remembered, even if her heart didn't want to. A young man across the aisle leaned forward, eyes wide. Is this normal? Why's a fighter jet flying so close? He whispered loudly. The people nearby shrugged. Some looked nervous. Some grabbed their phones. One person said, "Maybe they're practicing." Another said, "Maybe it's a VIP plane nearby." But she knew better. This wasn't practice. This wasn't coincidence. Someone out there had recognized something about her, and no one should have. She pressed her fingers against her forehead and closed her eyes for a second. She tried to steady herself. She wasn't the same person she once was. She had chosen a quiet life. She traveled like any normal passenger, blending in, keeping her past locked inside. She thought the world had forgotten her, but the sky hadn't. Suddenly the intercom clicked again. But this time, it wasn't the familiar calm voice of the first officer. It was deeper, more controlled, with a tone that carried weight. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We want to assure you that everything is stable. We have received updated instructions from air control. Please remain calm." Passengers exchanged confused looks. Some were reassured, others only grew more nervous. She didn't flinch. She recognized that shift in the captain's tone. He had been told something unexpected, something serious enough to change their route. She swallowed gently, trying not to react. They know. But how? How after all this time? Outside, the F-22 adjusted position, moving even closer. It floated beside them with perfect precision. She could see the pilot's helmet now, the tinted visor reflecting the setting sun. The jet wasn't threatening, it was escorting. No more than escorting. It was watching her. The flight attendant passed by again, this time with a worried smile. "Miss, are you okay? You look a little pale." She forced a soft smile. "I'm fine, just tired." The attendant nodded, but didn't seem convinced. She moved on, but kept glancing back as if she sensed something unusual. Her heart beat a little faster. She wasn't scared, she was confused. No one should know who she used to be. She had walked away before she became something big. before the world could attach a title to her, before her name or her call sign could be written anywhere. But maybe the world had still watched. Maybe the right people had still remembered. A soft click sounded again through the thin wall of the aircraft, like another radio frequency leaking into the cabin. And then she heard it clear enough that it felt like the words were being spoken right into her ear, confirming visual. Passenger call sign, Flamebird. Her whole body froze. FLAMEBIRD. Her old call sign. A name she earned. In a sky far from here. A name she swore she would never hear again. A name that had been written on a single classified file. Then sealed forever. She opened her eyes slowly. The world around her blurred for a second, like she had stepped into a memory she didn't want to revisit. She took a deep breath, letting the air calm her the way it used to before missions she no longer wanted to remember. Across the aisle, the young man noticed how still she had become. "Hey, are you sure you're okay?" She nodded gently. "Yes, just a bit dizzy." He smiled nervously. "If the jet gets any closer, I might faint." She almost smiled at that. Almost. The plane suddenly made a soft left turn, smoother than anything a normal passenger would feel. But she felt it instantly. The direction change wasn't random. It was part of a controlled corridor. They were being escorted. And Flamebird was the reason. She stared at the window again. The F-22 pilot raised a hand inside the cockpit, tapping the side of his helmet. Twice. It wasn't a salute this time. It was a signal. A request. He knew she could understand it. Her breath slowed. She touched her fingers to her lips, then lowered her hand again. She didn't return the signal, not yet. She needed to know more. Few moments later, the overhead speakers chimed again. The captain spoke carefully. "Ladies and gentlemen, Air Control has requested a short communication hold. There is no emergency. Please remain seated." Passengers looked around anxiously, but she didn't move. She realized something. The fighters weren't here for trouble. They were here for her. Not to arrest her, not to warn her, but to request her presence. As if something in the sky, or somewhere far from this flight, needed a call sign the world thought it had lost. FLAMEBIRD. She breathed out slowly, and whispered under her breath, almost like a secret she was afraid to speak aloud. "Why now?" Outside the window, another F-22 appeared, this time on the right side. 2 jets now. Full escort, full salute formation. All for the quiet girl in 24A. The cabin had grown quieter, almost as if every passenger could feel something unusual happening around them, but didn't know how to interpret it. People whispered softly, kept looking at the windows, and held their breath each time the F-22s shifted position. It felt like the sky itself had changed mood. But the girl in seat 24A remained. Still too still. Her hands were relaxed on her lap, but her eyes stayed fixed outside. She didn't blink much, and she didn't look away from the fighter jet beside her. It wasn't fear. It wasn't excitement. It was something older, deeper, like recognition, layered with confusion. The young man across the aisle continued staring at her. He couldn't explain why, but something about her calmness bothered him. "How are you not freaking out right now?" he whispered. She exhaled slowly. "Because this isn't as strange to me as it is to you." He raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. She wasn't sure how to. The intercom clicked again, but this time there was no announcement. Just a faint static, like someone trying to reach the cockpit privately. She tilted her head slightly, picking up what others couldn't. Someone from the fighter jet was requesting a secure line. And they weren't asking, they were insisting. She leaned back in her seat and quietly shut her eyes. Memories rushed in like a wind she had tried to outrun. She remembered the cold metal floors of training rooms, the sharp sound of instructors calling her call sign, the heavy suit she used to wear, the sky she once owned. She remembered moments when she felt more alive than anywhere else, but she also remembered the moment she walked away. The moment she told herself she wanted a normal life. A life with no duty, no mission, no salutes. Yet here she was again, being saluted at 37,000 feet. The plane suddenly hit a mild shift, a controlled one-knot turbulence, but a coordinated signal from the jets. People jumped slightly. In their seats, someone gasped. The elderly lady beside her grabbed her arm gently. "Dear, do you think we're in danger?" She shook her head softly. "No, they're not here for danger." The lady blinked. "How do you know?" She didn't respond. Instead, she looked out the window again. The pilot in the left F-22 tapped his helmet twice again, the signal. This time slower, almost asking her, "Please respond." She felt her throat tighten. She wasn't ready. Not yet. The captain stepped out of the cockpit. Passengers straightened in their seats. It wasn't normal for a captain to walk through the aisle mid-flight unless something needed attention. He walked slowly, his expression neutral, but his eyes searching. He didn't look for trouble. He looked for someone specific. When his gaze reached row 24, he paused. She lowered her eyes. He walked toward her quietly and leaned down slightly. "Miss," he said softly so that only she could hear, "may I speak with you for a moment?" Passengers nearby pretended not to listen, but clearly leaned in. She nodded gently and stood up. The captain guided her toward the galley near the back of the sounds of passengers faded. The captain looked at her with a careful expression, like someone who had already been told something surprising. "We received a direct instruction from military control," he said slowly. "They asked me to confirm if you were on board." Her breath stilled. He continued, "They gave a call sign." She looked away, feeling the first crack in her calm expression. The captain swallowed. "They said Flamebird." They didn't give details, but they asked us to stay en route until they confirm further instructions. "And the escort, it's specifically for you." She didn't speak. She could not yet. Then he asked what she feared most. "Should I expect more aircraft coming?" Her shoulders stiffened. Something inside her clicked into place. Not fear, not panic. Something closer to instinct. She opened her eyes. "Possibly." The captain stared, confused. "Miss, who exactly are you?" She looked down at her hands for a long second. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I used to be someone the sky remembered." "That doesn't explain why fighter pilots are saluting you," he whispered. "They're not saluting me," she said quietly. "They're saluting who I used to be." The captain stepped back, unsure if he should ask more. Before he could say anything, the galley door clicked from the outside. A flight attendant whispered urgently, "Captain, another military jet just joined." Her heart dropped. A third, F-22. That was an escort. That was formation shift. Something big was happening. The captain's eyes widened. He looked at her again. "Miss, do you need to contact them?" "Because they clearly want contact with you." She hesitated. Every part of her wanted to stay silent, stay hidden, stay normal. She had walked away from all of this. She didn't want to return, but the sky wasn't asking. The sky was calling her back. She finally whispered, "I need a radio." The captain blinked. "A radio? You mean the cockpit?" She nodded slowly. Her voice trembled, but not with fear, more like someone opening a door they locked long ago. "They won't leave until I answer them." The aircraft hummed softly around them. 3 fighter jets outside holding perfect formation, waiting for one quiet girl in seat 24A to stop hiding. Captain led her toward the front of the aircraft, his steps careful, almost hesitant. Passengers watched with wide eyes, whispering quietly as she passed through the aisle. They didn't know who she was or why a line of military jets had surrounded their commercial flight, but the sight of the captain guiding her toward the cockpit made their curiosity grow even more. She walked slowly, not because she was scared, but because every step brought back memories she had tried so hard to bury. The closer she got to the cockpit door, the more familiar the humming of instruments felt. It wasn't the same as the ones she used long ago, but it still felt like returning to a place she once loved and once ran away from. The captain opened the cockpit door carefully. "Only for a moment," he whispered. "Just enough for you to communicate." Inside, the first officer looked over his shoulder with wide, confused eyes. "Captain, is this her?" The captain simply nodded. She felt heat rise in her cheeks. She didn't like attention. She didn't like eyes watching her, expecting something. That was exactly why she had walked away. But this moment had found her again. The radio console buzzed softly, waiting. The captain gestured. "The line is open to control, military channel." She took a slow breath, the kind someone takes before stepping into a past they swore never to revisit. The pilot at the radio hesitated, then carefully pushed the headset toward her. "They've been asking for confirmation." Her fingers touched the headset like she was touching a memory. She placed it gently over her ears. The soft hum of the channel poured into her mind. It felt too familiar, too natural, almost like she'd never left. She stayed silent for a moment. Then the voice came clear, calm, formal. "Commercial Flight 7-1, this is Falcon Lead. Requesting confirmation. Is Flamebird present?" Her heartbeat slowed. She leaned slightly toward the microphone, her voice steady but soft. "I'm here." Silence hit the channel like a shockwave, then confirmed. Falcon Lead replied, but his tone was different now, respectful, almost relieved. "Flamebird, it's an honor to hear your voice again." She closed her eyes. Old memories flooded in faces, missions, sky after sky, the call sign echoing in her head. She opened her eyes again, forcing herself to return to the present. "This is not a mission," she said quietly. "I'm a civilian now." "We know," the pilot replied, "but we were asked to locate you. Command said you might be airborne today." She frowned. "Why?" Another pause. "This time heavier. Because someone is looking for you," Falcon Lead said. "Someone with authority." Her chest tightened. She escaped that world for a reason. She didn't want to be found. She didn't want those doors to open again. "I left that life years ago." "We know," Falcon Lead said again. "But Command told us to make sure you're safe." "Safe?" She opened her eyes wider. "Safe from what?" The cockpit suddenly felt too small. The air felt heavier. The captain watched her carefully, sensing her tension. The first officer pretended to be busy with screens, but he was listening too. She swallowed. "Is there a threat?" Falcon Lead's voice softened. "Not against this aircraft. Not against you directly. But something is happening. Something that involves your call sign." Her heart dipped a little. "My call sign is not supposed to exist anymore." "That's the problem," he whispered. "Someone revived it." Her breath caught. Someone had activated Flamebird. But only one person had the right to do that. One person she never expected to hear from again. She felt her knees weaken, and she placed a hand on the wall of the cockpit for balance. The captain stepped closer. "Miss, do you need a seat?" She shook her head. "No, I'm okay." The radio buzzed again. "Flamebird," Falcon Lead said. "Command requests a direct message. We can patch it through." Her stomach twisted. "Give me a moment." She removed the headset gently and stepped back from the radio console. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sudden weight of a world she had tried to escape. The captain spoke softly. "Do you know what's happening?" She nodded once. "Yes." "Do you want to explain?" She looked at him with tired eyes. "Not yet." The first officer cleared his throat nervously. "Miss, the military jets. They flew right into escort formation. That's not normal procedure. I know, she said. They're not here to scare anyone. They're here to guide. To guide who? He asked. She looked down at her feet, almost ashamed. Me. The cockpit fell silent. After a long moment, she put the headset back on. Her voice almost cracked, but she held it together. Falcon lead, she said. Patch through command. Copy that. Stand by. The radio hissed softly. Then a different voice came on. Calm, slow, firm. A voice she recognized instantly. A voice she never expected to hear again. Flamebird, the voice said. It's time. Her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers tightened around the console. The past she ran from had finally found her. Not to punish her, not to drag her back, but because something in the world, or the sky, or beyond it, needed her again. She whispered into the mic, "Why now?" The voice replied, "Because only you can answer the call." And in that moment, she knew nothing would stay normal anymore. The voice on the radio felt like a door opening after years of silence. A door she had locked herself, walked away from, and hoped would never open again. Yet here it was, wide open. Reaching right into her chest. She kept her voice steady. What do you mean it's time? The voice didn't rush. It carried a strange calm, the kind used by someone who understands the weight of every word. Flamebird. The voice said, "We wouldn't have searched the skies for you unless it was important. Something has changed. Something we cannot explain without you." She leaned against the cockpit wall slightly, trying to hide the tremble in her fingers. The captain watched her with growing concern. The first officer looked frozen in place. Not daring to interrupt, she spoke again, lowering her voice. "I left that world for a reason. I'm not the person I used to be." "You don't have to be who you were," the voice replied softly. "You simply need to listen." She closed her eyes for a moment. The headset pressed gently against her ears, sealing her in. She could feel the hum of the aircraft beneath her feet, steady and calm. But her heartbeat wasn't steady anymore. "What changed?" she asked quietly. The voice exhaled. "There was a signal." She opened her eyes instantly. "What kind of signal?" "A coded transmission," the voice said. "A pattern only you would recognize." Her breath halted. Only she? Her .flamebi RD. A code she created long ago. In a moment she almost forgot. Something she hid inside a training system as a test. A code no one ever figured out. Because no one else was supposed to. "How did you get it?" She whispered. "We didn't," the voice replied. "It came to us." She blinked. "That's not possible." But the silence on the line told her everything she needed to know. Something impossible had happened before she could ask anything else. Falcon Lead's voice quietly returned to the channel. "Flamebird, just letting you know another jet is joining formation. Viper unit." A fourth jet. Passengers would definitely panic now. The captain gently touched her elbow. "Miss, should I prepare the cabin?" She shook her head softly. "Tell them everything is under control. Don't mention me." He nodded and stepped out to calm the cabin. Alone with the first officer, she removed the headset for a moment. Her mind spun in circles. She wasn't scared, but she was shaken in a way she hadn't felt in years. Something bigger than her name, bigger than her past, was moving again. She looked at the first officer. He looked back with confusion, curiosity, and something like respect. "I don't know your story," he said quietly. "But whatever this is, they trust you." She nodded slowly. "That's what scares me." The captain returned a moment later, having calmed most passengers with gentle reassurance about routine military activity. Some believed him. Some didn't. But the cabin was quieter. The captain looked at her again. "Command once more?" She sighed softly. "Yes." The headset went back on. The voice waited. "Flamebird," it said. The signal carried coordinates. Her eyes widened. Coordinates for what? For a location off-grid. Somewhere unmapped. She froze. A hidden place? A silent zone? Something that didn't exist on any chart? Her thoughts flickered to the memory she had buried, the one she avoided, the one she told herself meant nothing. The old simulation she once created in training. A scenario about a lost location in the sky. A place she invented. Not real, not even possible. But the coordinates matched it. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. That's my code. Yes, how could it appear now? We don't know, the voice answered. But when we decoded it, your call sign appeared in the final signature. She felt something heavy settle in her chest. The sky wasn't just calling her. Something or someone had reached out using her code. Falcon Lead spoke again. Flamebird, we have orders to stay with you until you land. Another escort unit is on standby. She whispered, "This is too much." The voice on the line softened. "We are not asking you to return to service. We simply need you to listen to the coordinates and tell us if they mean what we think they do." She hesitated. She didn't want to go back. She didn't want to open old doors. She wanted a normal life, a quiet one. But this wasn't calling her back into duty. This was something else entirely. She whispered, "Read them." The voice gave the numbers slowly, clearly. Her chest tightened. Her fingers curled around the headset. She knew them. She knew them exactly, because she created them. She whispered the truth, her voice trembling. That location shouldn't exist. Silence. Then the voice replied, "That's why we need you." She lowered the headset slowly, staring at the cockpit floor as the world around her felt like it tilted slightly, even though the aircraft was perfectly steady. The first officer whispered, "Miss, are we safe?" She nodded faintly. "Yes." But her voice had a weight in it, a weight only someone carrying an old secret would feel. Outside, 4 F-22 jets flew in perfect formation beside them, waiting for her next word, and deep inside her, a part she thought was dead woke up again. Asterisk. The headset hung loosely around her neck as she steadied her breathing. Her mind wasn't in the cockpit anymore. It was somewhere between the past she ran from and the unknown place calling for her now. The faint hum of instruments, the soft blinking lights, the tight space. Everything reminded her of the world she left behind, but this time, she wasn't looking at it from the inside. She was looking at it as someone who no longer belonged anywhere. The captain watched her closely. "Miss, do you want to sit?" She shook her head. "I'm fine." But the truth was, she wasn't fine at all. Something inside her had cracked open, something she had kept locked for years. She wasn't scared, she was unsettled in a way she couldn't fully explain. Like the sky had whispered her name, and she didn't know why. The voice on the radio returned gently. "Flamebird, you still there?" She picked up the headset again and placed it back over her ears. "Yes." "We didn't want to say this without preparation," the voice continued. "But we believe the coordinates may point to a signal source, not human." The cockpit fell completely silent. She looked at the captain, at the first officer. Their eyes were wide, unsure if they had heard correctly. The voice didn't repeat itself. It didn't need to. She whispered, "That's not possible." "We know," the voice said calmly. "But the transmission had a structure too advanced for any of our systems. And the only signature readable on it was yours." Her stomach tightened. "But my signature shouldn't be anywhere. I created that code in a controlled simulation." "Yes," the voice said softly. "But the signal isn't simulated. It's real." She took a slow breath. Her hands instinctively curled into fists. She remembered the code well. It was based on patterns she studied when she was younger. Patterns from deep space radio bursts no one ever solved. She used them as inspiration for a training exercise, never imagining they meant anything. Flamebird. The voice whispered, "We think something, or someone, used that pattern to reach us." Her heartbeat slowed, then sped up again. A passenger knocked on the cockpit door from outside. The flight attendant opened it slightly. "Captain, the passengers are asking questions again. They're worried about all the jets." The captain nodded. "Tell them there's nothing to fear. Routine escort." The attendant swallowed. "They don't believe me. 4 fighter jets don't look routine." The captain sighed and closed the door again. She whispered into the mic, "What do you need from me?" "We need you to verify if these coordinates are tied to your simulation," the voice answered. "If the signal is mimicking your code, it means something, or someone has access to information only you knew." "But I erased everything," she said softly. "Every document, every note. I left nothing behind." The voice paused. "Sometimes the things we bury don't stay buried." Her jaw tightened. Falcon Lead joined the channel again. "Flamebird, be advised, we're entering a restricted corridor. Another jet will join soon." The captain raised an eyebrow. 5 jets? She nodded slowly. "They're taking no chances." Her legs felt weaker, so she lightly leaned against the cockpit wall again. The first officer handed her a small bottle of water. She accepted it, grateful, though her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "Miss," the first officer said quietly, "this is beyond anything I've ever seen." "Why would they involve you?" She didn't look at him. "Because my call sign wasn't just a nickname. It was connected to something classified." The captain crossed his arms. "Are you in danger?" She shook her head. "No, but I think the world might be asking a question I never answered." She placed the headset back fully on. "Flamebird," the voice said. "The coordinates appear again every hour. Same pattern, same signature. Always pointing to the same location. And that location is empty," she said. "Unmapped. No stations, no aircraft routes, nothing." "That's what we thought," the voice answered. "Until an hour ago." Her breathing paused. "What happened?" "A weak signal, faint but intentional. It tried to connect. And right before it disappeared, it repeated one word." She leaned closer. "What word?" Silence held the channel for a heartbeat. Then the voice said it. "Flamebird." Her knees almost buckled. She gripped the wall hard, steadying herself. "That's impossible," she whispered. "We thought so too." No one else spoke, not the captain, not the first officer, not Falcon Lead, not the escort pilots. The world seemed to hold its breath. She whispered, "How far is the source?" "Unknown," the voice replied. "The signal is moving." "Moving?" She repeated, shocked. "Yes, slowly, like it's searching." She covered her mouth with her hand, not out of fear, but out of something deeper. A feeling she didn't understand. A feeling she had never felt before. "Flamebird," the voice said carefully. "We believe whatever or whoever is sending the signal is looking for you." Her eyes filled with a quiet ache she couldn't hide. The signal wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't calling the world. It was calling her. Directly. And for the first time in years, she didn't know what to do. Asterisk. The cockpit felt too small now, like the walls were slowly pressing in. Not because of fear, but because everything she thought she had left behind was standing right in front of her again. A voice calling her, a code only she understood, and a signal moving toward an unmapped point seeking her like a heartbeat. Searching for its source, she steadied herself as the captain spoke softly. "Miss, do you want to sit down?" "You don't look well." She shook her head gently. "I'm okay. I just never thought any of this would find me again." The first officer looked between her and the instruments nervously. "Whatever this is, it's something only you seem to understand." She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the radio, the faint static whispering like something alive. Then Falcon Lead returned to the channel. "Flamebird, we have updated readings. The signal is changing direction again. She took a deep breath. Read it. Bearing 350. Altitude unknown. Speed extremely low, almost drifting. She frowned, like it's lost. Maybe, Falcon Lead said quietly. Or maybe it's waiting. The captain gave her a questioning look. Waiting for what? Her voice trembled. For me. No one spoke. She slipped the headset fully on again. Command, she said softly. I need you to tell me the moment it changes direction again. Understood, the voice replied. But Flamebird, we want you to understand something first. Go on. That signal, it doesn't match any technology we have. Not human, not military, not commercial. It's something else. Her throat tightened. Then how does it know my code? We don't know. How does it know my call sign? We don't know that either. The silence pressed against her chest like a heavy hand. The captain leaned closer. Miss, does this have anything to do with why you left the program? She swallowed. I left because I was tired. I didn't want a life that demanded pieces of me I couldn't give anymore. And now? The first officer asked softly. She didn't answer right away. She looked at her reflection in the cockpit window. The girl in seat 24, quiet, unseen, ordinary, wasn't the same as the woman hearing her call sign echo through the sky. She whispered, Now it feels like the sky didn't want to let me go. The headset crackled. Flamebird, Command said urgently. The signal has shifted again. It's moving faster. It changed its path the moment you spoke. Her heart skipped. It reacted to me? She asked. Yes, directly. The captain looked shaken. What does that even mean? She closed her eyes. She remembered the simulation she created years ago, the one based on unexplained patterns. A puzzle she buried because it scared her. Because it felt like her mind was reaching into something bigger than she understood. She never solved it. She left it behind, but maybe it never left her. Falcon Lead's voice returned. Flamebird, the signal is aligning with your flight path. Slowly, but clearly, her breath caught. It's following us? Yes, but why? The captain whispered. She lowered her voice, speaking mostly to herself. Because it recognizes something in me. Something I missed. Command spoke again, quieter. Flamebird, there's one more thing. Her eyes opened slowly. What now? The signal sent a second message. Not a code, not coordinates. She felt her pulse quicken. What kind of message? A sound, she frowned. Play it. There was a pause long enough to make every part of her nervous. Then a soft sound came through the headset. A tone. A rising note. Then a second. Then a third. A pattern she had heard once before. Long ago, during the simulation she created out of curiosity. A pattern she thought she invented. But this wasn't her version. This was older. Smoother. Like a voice humming from somewhere beyond the sky. The tone ended. She didn't realize she was shaking until the captain lightly touched her arm. Miss, what was that? She whispered. Not human. The first officer swallowed hard. You're saying something out there learned your pattern? She nodded slowly. Or, I learned theirs without knowing. The cockpit fell into a deep, heavy silence. Falcon Lead spoke again, quieter now. Flamebird, we're approaching your landing zone. Command is waiting. They want you to meet them after touchdown. The captain gently asked, Do you want us to tell passengers anything? She shook her head. No, they don't need to know. The plane began a soft descent. The escort jets tightened their formation, flying like silent guardians on either side. The captain prepared for landing. She removed the headset, her fingers trembling. The first officer looked at her with deep curiosity. Miss, what are you going to do? She stared out the cockpit window, watching the clouds drift below. Them, I don't know, she whispered. But something is calling me. and I can't pretend I don't hear it anymore. The aircraft broke through the clouds. The runway appeared ahead, glowing under the fading light. For a moment, she felt completely still inside a strange quiet, like standing between two worlds, the world she knew, and the world now calling her. Name dot as the wheels touched the runway, the escort jets roared past overhead, saluting her one last time. She whispered to herself, "Whatever this is, it found me for a reason." And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like running. She felt like answering.